Welcome everyone to the Community Infrastructure Services Committee for December 6th, 2021. Due to COVID-19 restrictions, City Hall is not open except for very limited services by appointment only. Members of the public are invited to participate meetings electronically by accessing the meeting live stream video at kitchener.ca/watchnow. While in person, delegations are not feasible at this time. Members of the public are invited to participate electronically in future meetings by contacting delegation@kitchener.ca to register as a delegation or submit written comments. We will deal with item number 1, which is the consent items. Do I have, we have a question. Councillor Michaud?
Yes. Can I ask a question about the Forest Creek always stop to staff?
Yeah, hold on one second. I'm just trying to think which one that.
It's 1.1.
1.1. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We'll move item 1.2. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And Councillor Michaud moves item 1.1 to be moved out of consent items. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Go ahead, Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. I'd first like to thank staff for the quick action on getting a three-way stop at this intersection. It is a very heavily foot traffic and a little chaotic in the mornings. I met with the principal a few weeks ago, probably a month or so ago, actually, and you know, we stood there and watched the traffic, and he informed me that 70% of the students at J.W. Girth cross at that intersection. So they're all from that new subdivision. So it's my understanding that this three-way stop will not be in until the spring. Is that correct?
McCrinnan Jones?
Through the chair to the councillor, that's correct.
Is there any way to put temporary stop signs here until the spring?
Through the chair to the councillor, the issue would also be the pavement markings and making it safe and designed per OTM. But we can certainly take that back and work with our operations team to see if there's something we can put there in the interim.
I think that, yeah, that would be great if it's possible. And also, I don't know if this is the time to ask for this, but a traffic patrol, a crossing guard, can that be put on this as well, or is that another department? I'm sorry if it is.
Through the chair to the councillor, same department, but a different review and analysis to determine if a crossing guard is warranted. Okay, so
we can just park that for now and address it. I guess it wouldn't happen. It wouldn't be able to happen immediately anyways. Is that correct? If they needed that, it's just because it is heavily trafficked there. It's 70% of the population of the students cross that street every day, and that's quite a bit of foot traffic at an intersection. And although I totally agree that it needs a three-way stop, I'm concerned that'll be even more chaotic if everybody's stopping and there isn't someone to direct people on who should go when.
Mr. Cronkite?
Yeah, through the chair. So when we're talking about an adult crossing guard, I think first and foremost is making sure that we get the controls right at the intersection. Once we have the controls right, then what we would do is we would review for that crossing guard warrant. It would fall under a bit of a different warrant than we've talked about in the past. It would be exposure index given the always stop condition. So again, that's something that we could do following the installation of the always stop. The always stop installation really does need to wait till the spring. And part of the rationale there is when you're doing temporary signs, and Mr. McCrimmon-Jones mentioned the pavement markings, but when you're doing temporary signs, they're on movable poles, basically the 2x4s with a stop sign attached. They're really only used in emergency instances because they do tend to go missing. They do move, and then what you do is you create a really unsafe condition because the signs wouldn't be prevalent or wouldn't be there at all times. So it would be our preference not to do anything temporary. It really does degrade safety when you do that.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for the three-way stop anyways. That's great.
Okay. So it's been moved by yourself, Councillor Michaud. All those in favor? That's carried. Okay. We will go to discussion items, and that's dealing with City of Kitchener Vision Zero strategy. And we have a 10-minute PowerPoint presentation by Ms. Husseini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
One second. Okay, hello everyone. My name is Paranak Hosseini. I'm the Transportation Planning Project Manager with Transportation Services. I've been overseeing the City of Kitchener's Vision Zero project, and today I'm joined by Erin McCrimmon-Jones, Manager of Transportation Planning, and Barry Cronkite, Director of Transportation Services, and I'm going to provide an overview of the Vision Zero project. Next slide, please. So this is the outline of the presentation today. First, I'll give an introduction about Vision Zero. Then I'll go through the project schedule, vision, and mission. Then I'll go through the partnerships that were created to develop this strategy, the public and the stakeholder engagement that was conducted. And after that, I'll explain the emphasis areas of the strategy and the proposed action items, followed by the required project resources and next steps. Next slide, please. So Vision Zero is a road safety strategy, and the goal of this strategy is to eliminate any traffic-related deaths and serious injuries. In Vision Zero, we believe that no preventable loss of life due to traffic collisions is acceptable, which means that people make mistakes, but the other elements need to be set in a way that would be able to reduce the impact of that mistake, so it wouldn't result in a serious injury or a fatality. Next slide, please. It is important to note that the City of Kitchener is already addressing many aspects of street safety through a number of initiatives supported by Kitchener City Council. This includes, but not limited to, Complete Streets, Neighborhood Speed Limit Project, traffic calming projects, Cycling and Trails Master Plan, and educational campaigns. Although we are doing a lot of great things, we have identified areas for improvement, and developing the proposed Vision Zero plan has given us the opportunity to identify gaps and propose action items to reduce injuries and fatalities on our streets. Next slide, please. So the City of Kitchener's Vision Zero strategy was developed in 3 phases. The main objective of phase 1 was identifying the emphasis areas of the strategy to ensure that the investments are taking place in areas with the highest impact. Collision analysis, public and stakeholder engagement, and research on best practices were conducted to identify these areas. In phase 2 of the project, action items were developed under each of the emphasis areas identified, and a second public and stakeholder engagement was conducted upon finalizing the action items and the implementation plan. The main purpose of phase 3 was to present the plan to council and securing the required approvals. Next slide, please. So the vision of this strategy is zero traffic-related serious injuries and fatalities for all the street users, regardless of their age, abilities, or mode of transportation. Achieving the vision of zero serious injuries and fatalities is a long-term goal, and it requires significant support, collaboration, and resources from all the stakeholders. The city is taking a multi-phased approach toward this vision. So this Vision Zero strategy will be the first phase toward this goal. Next slide, please. The mission of the strategy is to work with our partners to ensure that we are investing the available resources in areas that will have the greatest impact on road safety, and being able to observe a declining trend in the number of traffic-related serious injuries and fatalities on Kitchener roads after the 4 years implementation of the strategy. Next slide, please. To gauge resident and stakeholder feedback, presentations and discussions were held with the advisory committees, and 2 online public surveys were conducted as well. A project team and a project consultation group were created, including representatives from Waterloo Region Police Services, area municipalities, public health, GRT, etc. And these partnerships and collaborations with these agencies was a key element in developing the City of Kitchener's Vision Zero strategy. In addition, a 3-year collaboration with the University of Waterloo Transportation Engineering team was initiated to leverage their expertise on the state-of-art practices and solutions regarding Vision Zero. Next slide, please. Based on the analysis conducted and taking into account the city's strategic goals and priorities, staff have identified 3 groups of emphasis areas. The first area is vulnerable street users, and that includes pedestrians, cyclists, motorcyclists, school children, and people with mobility challenges. The second area is high-risk locations, and it includes residential zones, school zones, and hotspots. A hotspot is a location where the probability of a serious injury or a fatality is higher. And the third area is high-risk driving, and that includes aggressive driving, distracted driving, and speeding. Using these emphasis areas, the staff have recommended a list of action items. Next slide, please. So the first category of action items is evaluation. And the main intent of the action items under this category is identifying the root causes and the problem areas and having a process in place to measure the effectiveness of the solutions or countermeasures. The existing programs under this category are going to be enhanced through 3 main changes. Number 1, staff will be utilizing a new software that will do a comprehensive road safety analysis to determine the areas that are most at risk for a serious injury or a fatality collision. Number 2, staff will be working with the University of Waterloo Transportation Engineering team to collect new sources of data to be able to conduct a more accurate and a faster paced countermeasure evaluation analysis. And number 3, staff will be expanding the collaboration and data sharing with the police department and the public health for collision root cause analysis, as well as implementing joint solutions. Next slide, please. The second category is engineering, and the main objective of the action items under this category is to make physical changes to improve the safety of the infrastructure used by street users. And the main action items under this category include develop policies and implement road geometry changes in high-risk locations based on the network screening results, implement neighborhood speed limits and reduce the speed limits for high-risk locations, and review the traffic calming processes and policies and update them based on best practices. Next slide, please. The third category is education, and the main intent of the action items under this category is to raise awareness about road safety and Vision Zero, as well as eliminating high-risk behavior through educating the street users. The main improvements that we are proposing under this category include a joint educational campaign with public health to target speeding, distracted driving, and other high-risk driving behaviors, educational campaigns related to active transportation infrastructure, and school children. Next slide, please. The next category is engagement, and the main purpose of the action items under this category is continuous public and stakeholder engagement, as well as creating community-driven advocates for road safety. And that will be done through the main action items of creating a subcommittee specific to Vision Zero, creating dedicated channels for Vision Zero for information sharing with the public, conduct Vision Zero public events, and develop community partnership programs. Next slide, please. The final category is enforcement, and considering the limited authority that the City of Kitchener has in this category, the main objective of the action items here is to ensure that the existing resources are being utilized in the highest risk locations. And that will be through enhanced data sharing and collaboration with the police services, and continuing to work with our regional partners to expand the automated speed enforcement program. Next slide, please. So the new budget required to implement the plan over the next 4 years is estimated to be $770,000. And staff proposed that the required budget be accommodated by reallocating $770,000 of the formal traffic calming budget to hotspot safety improvements and educational campaigns. So this will reduce the scope of the formal traffic calming project from 3 roadways per year to 1, but it will help ensure that the budget is utilized in the highest risk areas through a holistic data-driven approach. In this approach, we anticipate that we will address more streets and a greater number of concerns as opposed to the formal traffic calming approach. Next slide, please. So if approved by Council, the Vision Zero strategy will be implemented over the 4 years of 2022 to 2025. Staff will identify the high-risk areas in 2022 and will report back to Council with that and the progress on the other action items by end of 2022. In phase 2, staff will start implementing engineering countermeasures in the identified high-risk areas and will continue the implementation of the rest of the action items. Staff will report back to Council on the progress of the work on an annual basis. Next slide, please. So that's my presentation. Thank you for listening, and we'll be happy to take questions and comments now. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Hussaini. We do have several delegations, and I will take questions to staff after the delegations. And so right now I have Mayor Verbanovic, Councillor Johnston, and Councillor Schneider in the queue. So if you guys want to unlower your hand, that'd be great, and I'll just keep that order for you. So delegations. Just want to provide a reminder to delegations that just give you a little bit of a background. So I don't know where I can't see it on here. But anyways, delegations have a 5-minute time limit to present their presentation, and that's just a kindly reminder to keep you within that time limit. So we do have several, and for our first delegation is Li Fu and NSERCA Alliance Project Research Team. Up.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, Lee, we can hear you.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the council. Actually, can you show the slide, please?
Yeah, Madam Clerk, do you have the PowerPoint presentation? Okay, here we go.
Great. Good evening, everyone. And my name is Li Fu. I'm a professor from the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at the University of Waterloo. And thanks for giving me this opportunity to talk about our research project that we are currently working on. The project is related to Kitchener's Vision Zero program, which currently actually that we are talking about. And so next slide, please. So the project is called Advancing Vision Zero's Road Safety with Operational AI and Smart City Data. It's a 3-year project with my colleague, Professor Chris Beckman, and myself as principal investigators. And the project was supported by National Science and Engineering Research Council of Canada with contributions from several government partners and private sector. In this case, including the Region Waterloo, City of Kitchener, City of Waterloo, and the Mar Vision. So I want to take this opportunity to thank the City of Kitchener for supporting our research. Next slide. So our project basically was motivated by this Vision Zero movement, and this chart shows you the number of cities that have initiated Vision Zero programs over the past decade, and you can see that it's increased steadily and over the past 10 years. One of the main motivation, of course, is to reduce the traffic fatalities, and especially fatalities involve vulnerable older users, and who are still overrepresented in total fatalities in Canada or many other countries. And the recent, pandemic over the past 2 years have made this, initiative even more relevant because more people start walking and biking. Next. And from this different, Vision Zero programs arise many challenges that call for research. I'm not going to get into too technical, but I'm just going to, give a few examples. This left side is this so-called safety pyramid, and showing that on the top is other collisions, okay, which really means that the collisions are most important, of course, relevant, but also means they are real, okay, and because they are real, it's very hard to kind of understand the safety just based on observations and or even predict them and even make it more harder. Okay, so the other challenge really is about related to how can we evaluate the effectiveness of countermeasures, and there's so many of them. And the right side is the chart show you the fatalities before after a Vision Zero program was initiated by in different cities in North America. I'm not going to name the cities, but as you can see that the statistics show a lot of variations, which essentially, kind of show another challenge is that how can we quantify the effectiveness and of these different programs and different countermeasures. Next. Next slide. Okay, so our goal, of course, with the project is really to address these challenges, but at the same time, we also are committed to provide technical support to our partners. And for City of Kitchener, actually, we have been working with the Kitchener team for over the past year, and on different tasks, from data analysis to network screening, to review of the best practice and the countermeasures. Okay, so we are very supportive of Kitchener's Vision Zero strategy, especially its 5E strategy, and hope that we can continue supporting the subsequent efforts through a data-driven, evidence-based system approach. Next slide, please. Okay, so as part of this effort, we're actually exploring application of advanced technologies, okay, including video sensors and the LiDAR sensors, and also VR simulator and the kinetic vehicle data. And we are working on to establish a research laboratory called SWIFT, which is a kind of combined of field test bed and virtual mobility lab. And this lab will significantly increase our capacity and the level, and enable us to leverage the support from our partners, and ultimately to address the challenges that we have been talking about. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Lee. That was just right on time. We do have a few questions for you. Councillor Johnston.
Yes, thank you, Chair Ioannidis, and through you, Professor Fu, thank you so much for being here this evening. My question was around your slide where you had information on how to quantify safety without waiting for crashes, and I think that is something that we don't want to wait for a crash whenever we believe that intersections, et cetera, are dangerous. So I'm wondering if you can expand on how you do that. Would be really interesting.
Okay, yes, thank you for this question, actually, Councillor Johnston, and it's a very good question, in fact, and I didn't have time to elaborate on that because of time limit. But it is a challenge that a lot of the municipalities are facing, because Vision zero problem by nature, okay, we don't want to see collisions, but don't want to see fatalities. But the traditional safety literature suggests that we have to actually use the evidence of the collision of fatality to do that. So that's a little bit kind of very conflicting kind of view on this, and that is one of the challenges that many of our research is trying to address. Now, just to give you an example how we could actually address these challenges. And one of the approaches looking at not just the collisions that had happened, okay, but also other events in the traffic system, okay. So I show you that this so-called safety pyramid. On the top of the collision, but in between, okay, there are a lot of things like near misses, conflict, and very close calls, okay. And so if we could somehow manage to collect this data, okay, and this data could be collected without seeing the collisions of fatality, and could be used actually to assess the difference between before after the implementation. So that's one thing we are exploring, that as the project title indicated, that we want to use AI or new data from smart city data, okay, like video cameras or LiDAR. In fact, that LiDAR is the latest one that we want to explore, that give us more kind of high resolution data on the activities of the loader users and the encounter or the conflict that could happen in the system. Yeah. So that we can collect this data very quickly, and we don't have to wait for collision to happen. So I hope this answers your question.
Yeah, you know what? Well, actually, I think it's I'm really interested in it too from an AI perspective, and if we can be using that data to kind of simulate or assume what things are going to be, then it's so much better than certainly waiting for crash data. So thank you so much for being here tonight. Very much appreciated.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chair Ioannidis. So Professor Fu, it's really interesting what you're doing. So this NSERC project that you're in, what stage are you at right now?
Actually, the NSERC project was approved last May. So we, so far we already started, and it's going to be it's a 3-year project, and so we're supposed to work on many different issues, and most of them are research related. So with a lot of academic kind of exploration, but we also kind of have the privilege to work with the partners, and we also want to be able to apply what is a result from the research to the real world. So I think this is a very nice kind of relation.
Yeah, it sounds like it's great timing.
And the time is great, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so your last slide, I didn't catch what you were referring to about the Shift Lab. Did you say that there will be?
Swift Lab, yeah.
Yeah, the Swift Lab. So is that part of your project, and will that help us to get better data?
Okay, so it's a long story actually behind this effort, and so the Swift Lab including 2 components. One is the field test bed. We want to be able to instrument the some intersections or road sections with this advanced sensors, okay, from video camera to LiDAR to Bluetooth Wi-Fi detectors, so and also weather and air quality sensors and so on. And so that's the field test bed. And then we also have the virtual mobility lab, which is a lab inside the campus. And so we already just actually a couple of weeks ago, we just notified that we have been successful in getting the fund for establish this virtual mobility lab. And now we are actually working on another proposal for funding from CFI, that's called Canadian Foundation for Innovation, to get money to buy the sensors to instrument the test bed, and which actually cover both the city of Waterloo and the Kitchener, and then this Highway 85 on the east side. Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay. So
and I have to say, because this was a proposal we prepared a couple of years ago, but because of the pandemic, was not kind of, I think it was not some other reason that we were not awarded, but we are asked to give another try. And at that the initial proposal, the mayor, Mr. Mayor, actually wrote a letter of support for us. So we are very grateful for that. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So you may have noticed in the report that the Vision Zero subcommittee from our Active Transportation and Trails Committee has provided some constructive feedback. And one of the things that they are suggesting we implement beyond what the staff are recommending is that we have more concrete and tangible goals for the short and medium and even long term. And I'm wondering if you think that your research project would be able to support that and in defining those types of goals that are easier to measure in the shorter and the medium term.
Yeah, so of course, this again, that is related to the challenge. One of the challenges that I mentioned, how can we measure progress, okay? And when collisions and especially fatal collisions are so rare and there's such a kind of uncertainty associated with these numbers. And so we, honestly, you would have to wait for long, many years in order to get something we call a statistically significant kind of measure, okay? And but our argument really is that we want we could look into other kind of events in the traffic system, as I mentioned.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Yeah. So I think that if we do that, okay, we should be able to at least in short term, okay, be able to come up with some kind of estimate about the effectiveness of certain program, okay, before after the implementation. And once we have that, we probably in a better position to maybe find out, the possible short-term or long-term goals. And otherwise, I think it's, I would say, it's kind of very challenging to just out of nowhere, okay, trying to come up with a number, say the reduction 20% or 50%. I think that's, it's I would say difficult to do,
Yeah. Okay. I have more questions, but I think I'm out of time, but thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You can key back right in, Councilor Marsh. Mayor Verbanovic.
Thank you very much, and thanks, Dr. Fu, for joining us this evening and for your presentation and your work thus far. I just want to follow up. In your presentation, you outlined the partnership and how it involves also the City of Waterloo, the region, MyoVision, and so on. So I guess my first question is really a two-part one. In terms, obviously MyoVision is one of the tech leaders, not only in the community, but across the country and globally in terms of this kind of work. I'm wondering if you can just elaborate a little bit more on what we're doing with them. And I guess the second part of my question is in terms of the things that we're learning for our own city and our region, are there things that we're going to be able to potentially share with other municipalities in the future?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor, for the question. And again, this project is kind of unique in terms of the number of partners that are involved, and also the industry partner, MyoVision, who is a tech leader, one of the tech leaders at least here in this region. So we are very happy to have them on board, okay. And so the work that the MyoVision is doing essentially is to develop kind of smart, signal control or signal monitoring system. And now they already have a project with the region. They're going to install all their solutions across the region. Okay, I think probably close to 300 intersections. And so we have been working with the MyoVision before this project and on other aspects, mostly related to performance measurement, like traffic performance measurement and signal timing. But for this project, the MyoVision is actually in the process, okay, to integrate the safety-related features to their solutions. So it's not just measure the how fast the traffic is moving or how much delay is at the intersection. They also want to come up with some sort of safety measures, okay, from their data, like video-based technology. And so that's how they actually become very interesting in this project, because we are kind of we are interested in developing solutions related to conflict-based safety analysis. And so I think there's a huge potential for them in terms of business in that regard. And certainly for them, it is also the advantage to start from here in this region, work with the local municipalities and the region and be able to demonstrate the solutions through the project. And yeah, so the potential, I would say that if successful, I'm sure that's going to be successful. And this could be certainly applied for many other places or other municipalities that they have already installed their solution. Yeah.
And then thank you for that. And then my last question is, I mean, you've obviously seen the report, you've seen the recommendations. Are there any things that you think it's potentially missing, or that, in a perfect world you would have liked to have seen included, but aren't at this point in time?
Yeah, I guess, again, that when we talk about the Vision Zero, we have to understand that this is, we have to have a long-term perspective, okay? So, of course, ideally, we want to have some sort of short-term kind of goals or objectives, but I think this could potentially wait until we have more kind of evidence or we have more data, okay, that we could set up these goals after, have some initial analysis or initial kind of, some initial work done, okay? And so that, again, I guess could be added, but I think it's probably still too early to do that. And the other thing, of course, again, I would say that, Vision Zero is all about a system, approach, like we call it, a safe system approach. And we have to look at the system together. And I think probably the most challenging part is how to change people's mind, okay? Because, the reality is that, the past century almost, we had kind of established this habit, okay? We want to be fast and everything that we get from A to B as fast as possible, okay? So I think Vision Zero is kind of trying to look at that differently, and maybe we should slow down a little bit, we'll be able to share the space in a kind of compatible way, okay? Different type of loader users can share the same space and without actually kill each other. So I think that part, I don't know whether or not that have been added into the proposal, but I think it's in general, I think, if we can find a way to do that, that would be a good idea. And that probably have to go through the media or through some other, ways here.
Right. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Verbanovich. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you. And thank you, Professor Fu, for coming in. My question has to do with the Ministry of Transportation. So often when we talk about traffic calming measures within a particular neighborhood, we're often met with a comment from, from the traffic staff, and quite honorably, that, well, we can't do that because it violates the guidelines set up by the Ministry of Transportation. So whether it be speed bumps or four-way stops or whatever the case may be. And I was just wondering how you integrate those rules into your analysis and into the projects or suggestions that you might have on how we can create this Vision Zero within our city.
Yeah, this again, this is a very difficult question, and the challenge, of course, with the Vision Zero is actually start from top. How can we change the regulation to address the approaches that we or the issues that we want to address? Although our research, of course, focus primarily on this more on the technical aspect of the problem, okay. And as I mentioned before, that can we find a way to evaluate, for example, the progress or the change in the effectiveness of certain countermeasures, so without actually have to waiting for collisions? Can we actually? How can we maximize the information that we can gain, okay, from certain technologies such as LiDAR or video cameras through AI algorithms and so on. So I'm not sure. Like I don't think I will be able to answer your question. It's a little bit kind of challenging. And as I said, that our focus primarily on the technical aspect of the issues related to Vision Zero program. Yeah.
That's fair. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Marsh.
Yeah, my questions were answered actually, but I just want to add that I want to thank you, Professor Fu, for your work and for your future collaboration with our city and the other municipalities.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Fu. We have no further questions for you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Our next delegation is Leslie Maxwell from the Student Transportation Services of Waterloo Region. Welcome, Ms. Maxwell.
Hello, just finding my controls. Sorry about that.
Sure, no
Thank
worries.
you. Thank you,
And we have a,
Chair.
do we have a PowerPoint presentation? Madam Chair, here we go. Okay.
Great, thank you for that. Thanks for having me or for allowing me to delegate today. My name is Leslie Maxwell. I am the School Travel Planning Supervisor for Student Transportation Services of Waterloo Region. Many of you know me, and I'm glad to be here today to stand in support of City of Kitchener's Vision Zero strategy. School travel planning aims to remove the barriers to active school travel for children and to restore children's independent mobility and to make walking to school an easier choice for families. The benefit you all know of this daily physical act that's outdoors in their neighborhood is immense on children's physical fitness, mental health, social connection, their environment, and their confidence. And all of those benefits are definitely worth our efforts. Somebody had mentioned, a mistake should be able to be made on the streets without cost of or imminent cost of life or irreversible impacts. And I certainly believe that to be true for children. They should be able to make a mistake without it costing them their life. We're honored and we're very pleased that the City of Kitchener has engaged with us in their development of this strategy. And we recognize that there are myriad ways that our goals for active school travel can be advanced through Vision Zero. Can you, next slide, please. Sorry, advance to next slide. So one of the ways is through data. And of course, we very much trust the Vision Zero data-driven approach to find the areas of high need. And they have a focus, of course, on vulnerable street users, including children. So we will be able to lean on their work to identify areas that we should be focusing our attention on. And we're very grateful for that. We also collect some data that might be able to help inform their work as well. So our data approach has not been as blanket wide as the Vision Zero approach can be. Our resources are limited, and we have small teams, so we do kind of audit some schools, and where we do, we're happy to share that data with the City of Kitchener. Next slide, please. We also know Vision Zero hopes to offer pedestrian safety education to all children and bicycle safety. In some areas in where Vision Zero is in other cities, they do have a goal of offering that kind of education to all children. We hope to offer it to as many children as possible through City of Kitchener's Vision Zero project. We're standing, we stand by ready to help in the delivery of that education, and as well, we work with our partners at Cycling into the Future, bringing knowledge of their project to the schools that we work with. So in this way, we really hope to help to advance that education through and to more schools as we move through and work with more schools as we advance active school travel. Pardon me, my notes are all over the place. Sorry about that. I fully believe that if we do and can reach all children with these kind of education programs, We're going to contribute to a road culture where future drivers are aware of the needs of pedestrians and cyclists. And they'll have an understanding of why predictable behaviors on the road are required in order to share the road in a safe way. Next slide, please. The Vision Zero directive to create a summary of best practices specific to school zones will help us to focus our funding and resources on the schools that have the greatest need as well. It'll also work towards having having a more effective approach to safety design requirements in school. Well, the city will have a more effective approach to safety design requirements in school zones, and we can be there to help educate the family groups as well when those changes are made. Next slide, please. Vision Zero will target speeding and traffic infractions around schools and like vehicles advancing through crosswalks like the one you see here in this photo. And as automated speed enforcement has already shown some great promise, we're very much encouraged by City of Kitchener's interest in moving to administer the program more internally so that it can be deployed more consistently for more schools. And so it's just another way that it will impact our work. And final slide. We stand ready now to work with city staff to engage people who really care about their neighborhoods and who care about children's safety on the way to school. I mean, we all do. And I think if you asked anybody, they said they would. But there's a lot of people who are already rolling up their sleeves to do this work. And the Vision Zero strategy will help more people get involved and help us to help facilitate that work. The school trip is a short trip that's made often. And it's one that's possible to be made by active modes of transportation if that trip feels comfortable and is safe and feels safe. With a Vision Zero strategy, we believe more children will be able to navigate their neighborhoods safely and independently. And they'll be able to develop the confidence and empathy for other road users that is really required to make them into safe drivers, eventual safe drivers. Our hope is that children will, through Vision Zero and school travel planning, will feel more intrinsically connected to their neighborhood, to their city, really. And they'll really know that Kitchener is a city that welcomes them. I will stop there and hope for questions that can help me clarify. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Maxwell. We do have a couple members of committee that will have some questions. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Chair Ioannidis, and thank you, Ms. Maxwell, for coming in tonight. It's always great to have you here. And I just want to tell you how much I appreciate the work that you're doing with our schools. And I like your approach that we have to get kids when they're younger to understand about active transportation, about safety, about different modes of transportation for getting around, and that's incredible. What I liked was your data screen, and I don't know if we can bring that back up about what the behavior I believe is that taken, Ms. Maxwell, from behavior around schools? Is that like the snapshot of what that is? Maybe Ms. Saunderson could pull that. I don't know what. Oh, thank you. Yes, driving behaviors in school zones. I actually happen to live in a school zone myself, and I can attest to seeing many of these behaviors myself. And that, I think, becomes the piece where we need to be educating parents about their behavior. So I was really happy to see that is part of your initiative. Are you working with bylaw on something like that, Ms. Maxwell?
Actually, this project is essentially just driven through our office. We have it's designed to replicate a study that was was conducted in Toronto with almost 200 schools.
Mhm.
And what we wanted was to look at some of the behaviors that they had identified in that study and other behaviors that numbers of parents in our own community have identified as unsafe behaviors near schools. And so we divide our school zones. We look at about 10 schools. Well, we look at exactly 10 schools each year because that's about as much as we can handle.
Right.
We divide the school zone into three 50 meter sections, and we have three people out looking at these behaviors and just tallying the behaviors. We don't work with bylaw to collect any of this information, but we certainly would be happy to share it with them when they went in, or if they were interested in seeing it. The studies that this one's modeled after in Toronto, the conclusion really was that what they saw was these behaviors are pervasive in almost every school context. And we're finding the same thing. We've done it for 3 years in a row now. This is each of these colors represents one of the schools that we looked at. And so we can see that in some schools, one behavior is more pronounced than another behavior, but honestly, like every single school is represented there. There are behaviors everywhere in every kind of school context. If we address speeding and we get speeding down, sometimes then congestion sort of takes over, or the reason why speeding isn't a thing is because it's too congested. In some areas, we see like on a split or divided street, we might see higher speeds, but and no U-turns because they're not possible. Whereas on a more open street, we'll see more congestion and more U-turns. So it's been interesting to watch. We started it as really an audit experiment to inform our action planning at individual schools. But when we tally them together, we really can see another story come out. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that all of council will tell you that we get multiple phone calls about driver behavior in school zones, and how that's probably one of the top things that we hear about. My question around whether or not you would connect it with bylaw, because I'm wondering if there's some work there that we can be doing in terms of the education piece. Then maybe that's something we can certainly take offline. But I think that even, different things that we could put on cars. I don't know. Anyhow, I'm thinking that the driver behavior around there is certainly something to be addressed. So thank you so much again for being here, and maybe we can talk some offline. I'll just quickly say too, you might be interested in checking out what the Westmount Neighborhood Association has done with a special sign campaign. They got a Love My Hood grant to get special slow down signs in their neighborhood that they combined, I think, with the parent council at Westmount as well. So
Yep.
they'd be really, really good. Thank you.
Really great. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Johnston. I'm pretty sure Ms. Maxwell knows quite well the behavior of drivers around the neighborhoods, in particular around schools, quite well. But anyways, Councillor Michaud.
Thank you, Chair Davey, Chair Anitis, sorry. Yes, Ms. Maxwell, thank you for coming in tonight. I'm really pleased to see the education part kind of enhanced a little bit with this project, and you are going to obviously play a big role in this. One of the questions I have is busing, school buses. Do you get, I get a lot of parents, a lot of comments on social media of people just completely ignoring the school buses. And there has been some conversation about cameras on buses, and I would like your thoughts on that.
That is really a better question for my general manager, Benoit Bourgo, but he is interested in following up with those projects, trying to figure out whether stop arm cameras are available and feasible on our buses, because we do hear those complaints as well. And so it's a good point that, school children are not just on streets, just on roads in front of schools. Children are everywhere at school commute time, and they're walking in their neighborhoods that are more than 1.6 kilometers away from the school to get to a school bus, and they're walking on the roads from that point all the way into school. We have a lot of work to do. There's a lot of areas that where families don't feel comfortable letting their children walk. Vision Zero is fantastic for that goal of having a whole city that addresses those issues in all nooks and crannies, right? So,
yeah,
that
you're right. Yeah. And I wonder if it would be a good idea to maybe at some point consider bringing your program into community centers if you're not already there, just to keep the momentum going through the whole year, because things will die off in June and everybody gets back to their, well, not everyone, gets back to their bad habits. And then you're back at September trying to get this back on track. So that's just a thought that it might be an opportunity to do some workshops or something in the community centers.
Yeah, we've had a little bit of luck that way, and I really like that idea because you're, especially in the city of Kitchener, your city has community centers fairly well spaced throughout the whole community. So we can take these programs to those community centers, and we're reaching people who can't necessarily come to us. So I like that idea. Our Sidewalk Smarts program actually does one in-class session and one on-the-road session. So what we like to do is, and the reason we do that is so that we can get kids out on the streets that are familiar to them and practice road safety in ways that will actually impact the way that they're moving on streets that they will be traversing, instead of bringing everyone to a central location. Like Children's Safety Village is fantastic for raising that awareness. But what we wanted to do was take the kids out of that protected setting and show them the real world. And what we're finding is that they can answer all the questions in class, but when we put them on the street, they don't know what to do. So it's a really great practice to be able to take it to the people. So I really like the idea of potentially working through community centers at some point. Yeah.
You're doing great work, and thank you very much for your presentation tonight.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Michaud. Councillor Marsh.
Hi, thanks. Thanks, Ms. Maxwell. So I'm just wondering, is some of your education program also geared towards parents who drive, just about safety of the students who are walking or biking?
Yeah, so we're starting to figure out a way to approach that. And this data is helping us actually bring the numbers to families so they understand why their small decision to block a driveway actually is part of a bigger picture. And so we have a couple of things on the go. We have developed a driver tips sheet that's being reviewed right now at with one of our partners that we want to bring out to more parents, and that is directly directed at these behaviors that you saw in that data table, because there's really nothing out there telling parents what is ill-advised in a school setting, right? The behaviors in that table were not all unlawful. You can make a U-turn where there is no posted sign, but is it advisable in a school zone? Is it advisable near a school bus? They don't necessarily know that, right? So, and why does it not make sense to park within 9 meters of an intersection? Well, when there's small children, they can't see over the hood of your car and they're trying to cross the street. So those connections aren't necessarily easy to make. And so, yeah, we're working on tip sheets that go out through the school administrative team. It's hard right now through COVID to really connect with the parents as well as we used to, but that's one way we can.
It would be great if we can work, our staff team can work with your team to share information about the Vision Zero, so that we can all get on board with the goals of no fatalities or serious injuries. And so I know that all of us have been in the situation where we're driving and in a rush and not necessarily choosing to go below the speed limit, knowing that it's safer because we're trying to get to where we're going. And so I think that if people switch their gears and think about, the impacts of, just leaving a little bit earlier in order to get to where you're going in a safe manner, those types of things,
Yeah.
I know we all can use. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. That is one of my leading one of my leading notes to families and drivers is to leave an extra 5 minutes, leave extra time and extra space, and then you won't be pushed to make decisions, in haste. And I think what we see with parents, we've even had situations where, and there's been an incident, and a parent will say, "I don't even know what I was thinking when I did that, when I drove like that." And I think in the morning commute, like there are so many pressures on a parent's time and their attention in the morning. They get into the car and they're thinking about work that, they too are going to make some human errors in that space. The problem is when we invite hundreds of children and 100 cars into the same space, and there are, lots of people not making the best choices, then we're setting up an inevitability that none of us wants to see, right?
Okay. Oh, we do have another question for you, Councillor Chapman.
Sorry for my late entry
That's
here.
okay.
Ms. Maxwell, thank you for coming. And I just wanted to say, you and I work very closely at one of the schools in my ward, and it was very instructive for me to walk down the street with you, and you would point out, different things as we're walking toward the school. And so I just want to commend you for the work that you do. And I know that it can be very instructive, not just for, us as council members, but also people in the community. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. And thank you, Chair.
No, thank you, Ms. Maxwell. It's been a pleasure having you here, and over the years, seeing your role grow further and further, and it's just such a tremendous asset to our municipality and to the region. So thank you. Okay,
that is my pleasure.
And with that, we have two more delegations, sorry. Our next delegation up is Danielle Allen. Welcome, Danielle.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Danielle and I live in Ward 10. A top priority for my family is creating a lifestyle that's in line with our values to minimize climate impacts. I walk to work and my husband works from home or takes the GO train. And if you were to look at the summaries of Vision Zero or other city plans and strategies, on paper, Kitchener looks like a great place for us to live in accordance with our values, especially in terms of walkability. However, in my experience, I feel like I face opposition from the city on my decision to walk to work as soon as it starts to snow. I'm shocked that Vision Zero strategy does not recommend that the city meets its responsibility to clear snow and ice from city sidewalks. Currently, this crucial public infrastructure is maintained by citizens on a voluntary basis. On my walking route along Queen Street to downtown Kitchener, there are only 8 private properties between my apartment building and region and city-owned properties. And because the city does not clear snow from sidewalks, at least one of these 8 properties makes downtown inaccessible to residents of my building for most of the winter. The impacts of this are much greater for those with restricted mobility who are forced to use the street to access downtown services in the winter. Without addressing city snow clearing, how can Vision Zero give pedestrians the same safety advantages drivers have and make sure Kitchener is accessible to all? The enhanced bylaw enforcement for uncleared sidewalks recommended in this strategy will not have any improvement on pedestrian safety. I ask what enhanced bylaw enforcement of snow clearing would look like. Is this proactive enforcement by bylaw officers? Would these officers be checking sidewalk conditions from a vehicle on an adjacent roadway, or would they be checking sidewalks from the sidewalk as a pedestrian does? Are the resources required for sufficient enforcement not better spent just clearing the snow? Last winter, I learned snow clearing was enforced on a complaint basis. Complaints can be submitted within 24 hours of snowfall ending. Then bylaw will visit when they are able and issue a warning with another 24-hour grace period before the city would issue a ticket or take any action. That could leave a walking route inaccessible and dangerous for the better part of a week. Last winter, my husband and I spent a significant amount of time documenting and reporting uncleared sidewalks along our walking roads. And I want to stress that by the end of the winter, there was no improvement in snow clearing along our walking roads. Even with our diligent reporting, documenting addresses of uncleared sidewalks is no easy task in cold, snowy weather, when your hands would rather be in mittens than working with touchscreens or trying to take down addresses with a pen and paper. Calling these addresses into bylaw almost daily requires the privilege of having time and ability to call them into bylaw. From my experience, I learned that participating in the reporting process requires privilege, much like reporting a slip and fall injury or participating in the city's public consultation around snow clearing. I feel that Kitchener's pass the buck approach to snow clearing and enforcement fails to understand or meet the needs of vulnerable street users. This is not addressed in Vision Zero and it undermines its success. I would like to see Vision Zero recommend city snow clearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. We do have a question for you, Councillor Marsh.
Yeah.
Hey, Ms. Allen, thank you so much for bringing forward your perspectives. I know that when we spoke last year, it was quite clear that it's a frustrating experience. And I totally understand that it is frustrating, not only for you, but for many pedestrians to get from A to B without finding a sidewalk that's not been cleared properly. And I'm a little bit surprised though to hear that you saw no improvement after all the complaints. And so I'd like to follow up with you after this meeting, on a subsequent day to follow up and let's look at some of those examples and see how we can improve it going forward this year. I understand that what you're asking for is for the city to look at completely committing to sidewalk snow clearing. If we're not able to get there, then at least we can try to improve the situation this year for right now. I can tell you that staff have begun hiring additional proactive bylaw enforcement officers for this winter. And I'm pleased to share that with you, that will be implemented for this winter on top of the 4 that were out last winter.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Marsh. We have no further questions. Thank you very much, Ms. Allen.
Thank you.
And our last delegation for this item is Jorg Broschek. Sorry if I pronounced the name wrong. Kitchener Cycling and Trails Advisory Committee. Welcome, Jorg.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the opportunity to speak in favor of the Vision Zero strategy. My name is Jorg Broschek. I'm a member of the Vision Zero subcommittee, and we have been working on this for quite some time now and accompanied it and gathered information and data and have some recommendations that are attached to the package here. And I would like to use these 5 minutes to just highlight a few points here. And let me start by saying, first of all, that we think driving behavior is a huge problem in our community, and not only in school zones or vulnerable zones. It's a more encompassing thing and a more encompassing problem with important implications. What we've been doing is we've been looking at research, also at best practice from other municipalities in North America, but also in Europe, to evaluate and think a little bit about the strategy that staff has developed. And we also look forward to further having this dialogue here. We think that driving behavior has important implications that are often not really surfacing in our data. So they expose obviously vulnerable users like cyclists and pedestrians to dangerous situation potentially, but it also, the situation also prevents many users from using active modes of transportation. And therefore we think that a robust Vision Zero strategy can become an important policy instrument for the city to not only advance road safety, but also work towards other goals like that are mentioned in the master's plan, more equitable infrastructure, but also working towards climate change by supporting active modes of transportation. So let me very quickly point to three main key elements that we really think are important here. We organized our recommendation around three main goals, or three main topics. One is goals, the other one is instruments, and the third one is the process. So first of all, when it comes to goals, we suspect that when you move forward with the strategy, there will be conflicts between different policy goals. Drivers will maybe complain about inconveniences, etc. And what we would like to see here, and that's a part of our recommendation, we want to really see that safety enjoys priority. And that would really be a paradigm shift if we compare our strategies over the last, I don't know, 60, 70 years, maybe even, where actually convenience for drivers was always paramount. So we would like to see this in case of competing policy goals really trumping other concerns. And let me exemplify this by turning to my second point, instruments. We think if this strategy would be rolled out in a more encompassing way, it would be necessary to maybe better align different elements, the ease, education, enforcement, etc. And one point that strikes us as really important is the recognition that a speed limit of 30 and not 40 on all residential roads moving forward as the default would be important. Now, we acknowledge that just putting up a sign is not enough. Therefore, we also recommend to really exploit all potentially available sources to really enforce these speed limits. Whenever engineering options are not available, ASE is part of the strategy, but we also think that what we can learn from other examples, mobile ASEs that are sort of rotating throughout different hoods would be something that could help. At least this is also what the best experience and evidence from other municipalities suggest. And my third and final point is related to the process, which also is something that we really appreciate and think is a good idea to have this as a living document moving forward, a dynamic approach. We have some concerns that are indicated in or listed in our report. Let me point to one, and that also maybe speaks to a question of Councillor Chapman that came up earlier. A broader stakeholder approach than is already the one that is already entailed in the current proposal could be beneficial. Again, best practice, take maybe a look at Montreal, which is considered to be one of the more successful strategies and examples in Canada. They have developed a really broad stakeholder approach that also includes the federal government or the ministry, responsible ministries, the provincial level, the automobile industry, insurance industry, for example, and others. We thought, for example, about CAA, other potential stakeholders that could be included here. So I leave it with this. My time is up, but I would be happy to follow up and address any potential questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Broschek. Your timing was almost exactly perfect. We do have a question for you, Councillor Chapman.
Hi, thank you for coming in and presenting. I just wondered if you said you're on the Vision Zero subcommittee, and I was just wondering if you had looked at or considered concerns that were similar to what Danielle Allen just presented about the sidewalk clearing. And, you know, what do you draw from that concern, and how might it fit into your analysis of Vision Zero?
So we have not explicitly included sidewalk cleaning as a goal, but I can, I think, report here with confidence that most of our members in the overall committee, but for sure and for certain, those within the Vision Zero subcommittee, and we are 3, would be quite in favor of a program that would really tackle this issue. What we do have, however, in our Vision Zero recommendation is that we strongly recommend that the city uses, and Councillor Marsh mentioned that already, uses more bylaw opportunities to enforce potential problems when it comes, for example, to bike lanes, but of course also for pedestrians on sidewalks. So I can, in this respect, I personally, I speak for myself now, only echo what was mentioned earlier in the delegation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Broschek, for your presentation and on behalf of the Vision Zero subcommittee. And thank you very much to all of the committee members on all the work that you've done to prepare this, this report. I wanted to ask you, with regard to the previous presentation from an earlier delegate, do you see a benefit in us looking to make more tangible and shorter term goals that would work with what the Professor Fu is working on? Do you think that would be a good way to go about it?
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Marsh, for the follow-up question. Yes, so that was actually one of the first topics that we as a subcommittee talked about and what we discussed. We believe that, of course, there's this goal of Vision Zero. Well, yeah, that is a marvelous goal. However, the proof is again always in the pudding and how we enroll and implement this over a certain period of time. And this is where our first concern, or let's put it more positive, in a positive way, our recommendation was coming from. We would like to see in this plan more tangible goals. I don't know if it's really possible to specify something for a 1 or 2 year period, which would be short term, but at least for the medium term, it would be good when it comes to the reevaluation of the progress of this program from a policy perspective to see what have we achieved. And what I think, if I may add this, what I think is really important in this respect, and that relates back to the data problem. First of all, obviously, we can't wait for collisions. Second, if we only take a look at the quantitative data, we see, oh, actually, it's not that bad because there hasn't even been a collision, a fatal collision, I think in the last 2 years or whatever. However, these near collisions that we, for example, as a family experience on our way to school every day, they are not covered in the data. Or other problems that are not really captured through quantitative data that you can only evaluate and ascertain and assess through a more qualitative approach. That should be somehow used as a basis to then define, okay, we can use this as a goal for the next 5 years or so. And again, my last comment here, take a look at what other municipalities in North America, but even more so maybe in Europe, because they started Vision Zero much earlier. There's a lot of data and research on this, how they have achieved these goals. So I think there's considerable potential to draw on this experience and really put it into this plan. And that was more or less our recommendation as a subcommittee and the committee as a whole. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And Mr. Broschek, we have no further questions. Appreciate you coming in. And that concludes all of our delegations. So I will ask Mayor Verbanovic, Councillor Johnson, and Councillor Schneider, and then Councillor Galloway-Seelock. Are you with questions for staff too? Okay, and then you'll be after Councillor Schneider and Councillor Marsh. Go ahead, Mayor Verbanovic.
Okay, thanks, Chair Ioannidis, and let me begin. Mr. McCrimmon Jones and Ms. Hosseini for thanking you for the work on this initiative, together with our Cycling and Trails Master Plan Working Group and others that you've consulted with and other staff that have been part of the process. my first question is, actually, I'll start off by focusing on some of the input that we heard from these delegations, in particular the last delegation, around some of the working group's recommendations, particularly around setting some definite targets and goals, both in the shorter term and the longer term. And I'm just wondering, is there a reason we haven't done that yet? Is that something that could happen? As part of the initial rollout of this, because I do think that it does give us something to help measure our efforts against going forward.
Through the chair to the mayor, it can be unethical for us to say any number of fatalities or serious injuries are acceptable for people moving through the transportation network. So our quantitative goal really does sit at 0. And that's the bar that we're setting for ourselves. And what we want to see over the long term is reaching 0 and a continuous trend down in those categories. In terms of other short-term goals, as Dr. Fu said, we're probably a little too early to put any kind of other quantitative numbers in terms of goals. We are identifying a list of action items, which is in the Vision Zero strategy, and timelines for where we want to implement specific action items. So I think that's where we're sitting right now, is ensuring that we get these things implemented over the 4-year term, and we see that decline over that phase.
Yeah, and I do see the issue and the dilemma around that. So thank you for being so frank in terms of that response. In terms of our collaboration with our colleagues in in the other municipalities, is this an initiative in a direction that we think the others are going to move in? I mean, I know at the region we have a different program. It's not called Vision Zero. It's been a locally developed one, but I think this benefits from being part of sort of the marketing and the social efforts around Vision Zero that are happening in other communities. So when you go into the GTA and you see Vision Zero signs on the those compass boards or whatever, you get it, right? You understand it, and that comes home as well. How's that going in terms of that collaboration?
So through the chair, I'll take this one out through the chair. It's something that Mayor Verbanovich, you've alluded to in terms of the region having its own kind of road safety program, which really at the heart of the road safety program has the same kind of principles that Vision Zero has. So there's a focus at the regional level. The City of Waterloo recently approved their latest transportation master plan, and embedded within that master plan is Vision Zero. So they're very much kind of in lockstep with what we've proposed here. And the City of Cambridge, in terms of the final major municipality, is considering a Vision Zero program or a road safety program as well. So in terms of the major players sitting around the table in transportation, we're all heading in the same direction. And there may be nuances depending on which municipality that you're dealing with, but we're all working in the same direction.
So in that regard, I mean, in particular, as we get into social marketing and the reality that we're all working, within the same broader geographic area, and people travel back and forth within our municipalities, do we see ourselves being able to collaborate on that to get bigger bang for our buck?
Through the chair, absolutely. All our partners throughout the region are part of our working group, and that would continue to be the case. So we would foresee working with the major municipalities in the region moving forward on those initiatives.
Okay, I have a couple other questions, but I'll leave them for now and to let others ask. And if they don't get asked, then I'll come back to them. And Mr. Chair, at the appropriate time, I'd certainly be prepared to move this.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Urbanovic, as moved by yourself. Up next, we have Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Chair Ioannidis, and thank you so much to staff for preparing this report. As you know, we are all in constant contact with you and your team about traffic safety in our wards. It's the number one thing that comes up for all of us. So I thank you in advance for all the work that we put on your plates, but you are, it certainly is a great job security. And I am just kidding on that, by the way. I really am. I had some questions actually around communication, and to me, the communication piece and the public education piece is something that we need to ensure that we're doing. I had asked Ms. Maxwell some questions around public education with and what the school board is doing, et cetera, and love to see that partnership with them as well. When I looked at the slide on that we had up about the engaged and the surveys that we're doing, I think we got close to 800 respondents around that. How are we getting our public education campaigns out to people who don't have social media, who aren't on computers, et cetera? Is there something more that we can be doing? Because I'm feeling like we're missing a whole segment of people.
Through the chair to the councillor, so as you know, one of the E's is education, and that's all about pushing information out. And we've identified several new action items, one of which is a media campaign. We've seen some pretty moving and memorable campaigns out of Europe that use sometimes shocking or positive messages to create these sticky memories for people. And we want to do that with public health, with the police service, and push that campaign out in as many forms as we can, whether it be TV, radio, print ads, bus shelters. And we've very early on started looking at some ideas, potentially working with victims of severe injuries in collisions, and maybe using them to help tell their story about the consequences of unsafe driving. So that's sort of one of our big ticket items. We do have a healthy budget to work with schools to hold a Vision Zero Day. The other important E that you've alluded to is engagement, and that's really about hearing from the community. And through that, we want to understand, are we reaching people? Are people hearing about this? And understanding, continuously where our improvement can be and where our gaps are. So those are just some of the early ideas that we're working on.
Yeah, thank you so much, because I've been thinking about some of the engagement that we're doing, say, on our parks and things, where we're going out to our parks and having kind of pop-up days and things. I'm wondering if we thought about doing that with our parks, maybe our community centers, and the partnerships with our schools, and maybe just having some different ways of looking at it, maybe than what we have, maybe signage as well. But I really think that is a piece that is a lot less expensive than some of the other alternatives, but some things we can look at. Anyhow, thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Ioannidis. I'm really excited to see this coming forward, and great to hear from the delegations tonight. Leslie Maxwell and I work very well together on some issues, and I can see in Vision Zero that a lot of what's come up in some of the engagement we've done with the parent councils, it's in there. I just want to kind of ask our traffic team. I know from the traffic calming projects that I've been involved with you, the comment of changing driver behavior is the biggest challenge. And maybe you just comment on what Vision Zero is going to do and helping to do that.
Through the chair to the counselor, it's really a package deal, and that's what we've talked about as a project team. There's no one magic pill here. It's really a suite of tools under the 5 E's: engineering, engagement, enforcement, evaluation, and education. There isn't one thing that's going to shift driver behavior on its own, and it's really all of these stakeholders coming together and focusing on their realm of expertise and working together to try and shift driver behavior. And that's really the framework that Vision Zero is based on. And that's why, in addition to the goal of zero, it's that framework that we see as being so beneficial and using that to our advantage.
Okay, thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Schneider. Councillor Galloway Seelock.
Yeah, I'd like to thank staff for this great report. I think it's really an important piece of work that has been completed. I do have one question. My other question was asked by Mayor Urbanovic with regards to the region of Waterloo. But my second question is, how many streets do we currently have on the formal traffic calming waiting list?
Through the chair to the counselor, approximately 180 streets.
And those are all fit within the requirements to do formal traffic calming, or just 180 that people have identified that they'd like some sort of measures put in place?
Through the chair to the counselor, those are the streets where we get requests. As soon as somebody requests to us for traffic calming, they go on the list, their street goes on the list, and then we evaluate that street on an ongoing basis to see if they will in fact fall to the top of that list and be warranted for formal traffic calming.
Okay, I just have some concerns with using the majority of the traffic calming budget to accommodate or to allow this program to move forward. I'd like to see maybe us look at a different funding mechanism, but we'll see where that falls out as we go through this, hear from the rest of council.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Galloway Seelock. Up next, we have Councillor Marsh.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I too want to thank staff for all the hard work that you've put into this comprehensive strategy. And so I know that you take the Vision Zero subcommittee's feedback with to heart, because it's something that you're very passionate about as well. I want to ask you, I saw that all of the points have been addressed by staff, but I want to ask, do you see any potential to implement some of their requests and or recommendations in a more timely way?
Through the chair to the counselor, yes. So we've adjusted some of our action items to reflect some of the feedback from the subcommittee, such as working with the insurance industry and other levels of government, both provincial and federal. So we'll definitely work on those action items. So that was probably the biggest change that we were able to make. There was the recommendation for mobile ASC units, and the ASC unit that we use is technically mobile. It moves around the city, but we will look to other municipalities like Oakville to see how they're working their ASC, and we can provide that feedback back to our working group with the region. So those were some of the initial things that we can do. We are limited somewhat. So, you know, the discussion around the speed limits that's happened at council already, but we will use 30K. It's going to be a really important tool for us, and we're going to use that across the city, 30K being 30 kilometers an hour in vulnerable user areas. But this is an evolving document, and the subcommittee is an action item in itself. So we are looking forward to ongoing discussion and constructive feedback from that committee on how we're evolving.
Okay, that's great. You know, I'm really pleased to hear that you're looking at broader stakeholder stakeholder engagement, provincially and federally, and I can picture the whole Vision Zero movement moving forward more quickly if we can work together with counterparts in other municipalities across the country. I'm wondering also about the suggestion that we look to have the 30 kilometers an hour engineering be implemented regardless of when and if we can reduce the actual posted speed limit to 40. So it's my understanding that all residential streets that are not arterial roads are going to be designed going forward as if it will be posted at 40 kilometers an hour. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But if we were to actually design them for 30 to be safe at 30 kilometers an hour, then wouldn't that help us achieve our goals quicker?
So through the chair, in terms of a document that you would have approved in 2019, the Complete Streets, that document gave direction to make the design speed on local and minor collector roadways 40 kilometers an hour. Typically speaking, the design speed is 10 kilometers an hour, 10 to 20 kilometers an hour over and above the posted speed limit. That's simply a reflection that if you do drive slightly above the posted speed limit, we still want to make sure that the street is safe. So the appropriate, in terms of trying to get to an operating speed of 30 to 40 kilometers an hour, designing the street for 40 kilometers an hour is the appropriate approach. That said, the measures that have been built into not only the Complete Streets guidelines, but the new development manual should have a significant impact on the way that our local and minor collector streets look going forward. And just to give a little bit more context there, every time a street is under reconstruction, we take every opportunity we can to implement those measures.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh. Councillor Chapman.
Yes, thank you. I guess I wanted to start by asking the same question about the Ministry of Transportation and its guidelines. How do you balance that as you move through this whole process? Because I'm sure there are things that right now you might say to us, oh, we can't do that because of the ministry, and that in fact we're going to do it because we know if we want to meet these goals, it's going to be necessary to do. So what will that look like?
Through the chair, a number of the guidelines that you've typically heard us reference in the past is they're put in place so that there is a consistent approach throughout the province. So in terms of modifying those guidelines, it's something that you'll see within the engagement action item of advocacy and engagement with provincial and federal agencies. And the intent there is that if we see improvements in some of those policies, or we see potential improvements in some of those policies that we already use, then the avenue there really is to advocate for those changes. And oftentimes you can advocate and be approved for a pilot to determine if some of those changes do make sense. But really it comes down to consistency. So we want to improve safety within the city of Kitchener, but at the same time, we want to make sure that there's consistency across the board so that when we have visitors from outside of our boundary, they're fully aware of how to use these measures as well.
Okay. The other question I had has to do with traffic studies around big developments. So there, residents have concerns as, 1,100 new units go into a neighborhood, that how that's going to impact the traffic patterns in their neighborhood. So, I mean, when you think about, Vision Zero, how does that factor into, meeting these goals? Have you thought about, doing a more comprehensive overview of that traffic study rather than just, I think, 120 meters right now you might cover, but rather look at it more beyond that, to look at, neighboring developments or areas that would also could impact the traffic patterns in the immediate area of the development. So I'm just wondering what the thought process there might be at this
Okay,
point.
Councillor Chapman, this is starting to get a little bit outside of the scope of.
No, it's not. It's
For-
Vision
for the-
Zero.
Well, I'm
For the-
sorry, I'm the chair. I can decide which is
Okay.
not. But if Mr. McCrinnon, if you want to quickly answer that.
For the chair, it's Mr. Cronkite. I'll answer that question. And I would say that the two are, while there may be intricacies that are intertwined, they're fundamentally different. A development really is about the increase in traffic and potential congestion, whereas Vision Zero is about whether or not the roadway is inherently safe. So we can make a roadway inherently safe regardless of the volume. It's really about making sure that the conditions on the roadway are as safe as possible. Oftentimes congestion can actually have an opposite impact. It can slow traffic down and it can make things safer, especially for those more serious and fatal collisions. So again, I don't see Vision Zero as a tool or including a tool to address development.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Davey.
Thank you. First off, I noticed that Ms. McGoldrick, I think she's in the call. I just wanted to ask her a couple quick clarifying questions, if I could. Great, with respect to, and I know Ms. Osini was behind this as well, but just on the sidewalk snow clearing piece. So please keep the answers brief because I don't want to go too far off track. I'm not going to rehash any arguments. Just want to, Ms. Allen, she sent us an email, I believe last month, and she took the time this evening. So I think she deserves more of a fulsome response. So first question, Ms. McGoldrick, is did the city explore citywide sidewalk snow clearing?
So through the chair, yes, the city did explore citywide sidewalk clearing through a number of pilots over the course of, I believe, 3 years.
Okay, and that was going to be my next question. So you would describe the process as it wasn't cursory, it was more extensive or exhaustive in your opinion?
It was an extensive review. We looked at various data, collected information from residents as well as a statistically valid survey.
Great. And how long ago did council make that decision? Do you recall?
Council considered the outcomes of the pilot. I believe it was June of 2020.
Yeah, actually I recall September, so a little over a year
Okay.
ago. Okay. And lastly, do you recall when council had all that data, do you recall whether it was a close decision?
I don't recall the outcome of the vote, Councillor Davey.
Okay, I do. I believe it was along the lines of 10-1. So I just think Ms. Allen, if she'd like more information on that, she can certainly follow up again with her ward councillor in terms of making sure that proactive sidewalk snow clearing piece gets looked at, and I'd be happy to speak with her as well. On to the more Vision Zero part of it. Thank you, Ms. Goldrick. Sorry, one last question with that. The other Vision Zero implementations, my understanding of Vision Zero has everything to do with reducing traffic fatalities. So does sidewalk snow clearing fit into that at all in any Vision Zero implementations you've seen anywhere, even in Europe?
Through the chair to the councillor, yes, maintenance can play into a Vision Zero plan.
Okay. In terms of the safety aspect of it, by the way, this is a fantastic report, but the part that I thought might be missing a bit is the onus on the automobile manufacturers. And I know we have limited ability to affect that directly, but perhaps through lobbying efforts. Has there been any exploration in terms of the safety features that are on modern vehicles, radar, cameras that can identify pedestrians and cyclists for automatic braking? Is that part of, I didn't see it in the report, but is that can be part of the process?
Yeah, so through the chair, we have an action item that specifically talks about that. That is about advocacy and engagement. We have a few action items that staff, as you mentioned, do not have a lot of authority to be able to make changes. We will be working with the council and the mayor's office for these action items to advocate for them, and that is and one of them is advocacy for advanced safety features on passenger vehicles.
Oh, that's excellent. So will that come after the data collection?
So through the chair, that is included under the engagement action items.
Okay, very good. And last question, and I don't know if you can answer this now or if this can be part of the research part as well, but the photo radar aspect, one of the challenges I understand in rolling out photo radar, which I think is the most effective tool, is the court system and the potential backlog there. Do we have the ability, or we have to lobby for the ability to be able to implement our own system that doesn't necessarily charge speeders, but perhaps we could do a system of sending the notification and set up our own cameras as more of a friendly reminder system? In other words, do we have access to addresses based on license plates?
Through the chair to the councillor, so that advocacy to move that to an AMP system is happening right now with an AMPS working group, which involves a host of different municipalities and a consultant working with the MTO and the Ministry of Attorney General. In terms of setting up a system that would send a reminder or a notice to drivers without actually fining them, we see a few challenges with that. The first being there's a significant capital cost to set up these programs, the technology, the infrastructure, and there's also an ongoing annual maintenance fee associated with this. And in terms of actually issuing the tickets, every time the city needs to understand or register who the registered owner is of a license plate, a request has to go to the MTO, and it's a $8.50 charge every single time. So that would add up very, very quickly, especially if there wasn't any income to offset those costs. Finally, the other challenge is it may impact the effectiveness. So if drivers started to see that some of the ASC locations only resulted in a notice, they may start to treat all locations like that and not take them as seriously. But we don't have any data to back that up. That's just one of our initial concerns.
Okay, I appreciate that context. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you, Chair Ioannidis. I want to thank staff for this great report. This was has been a lot of work for all of you, and I think in a relatively short period of time. So it's a great report. A couple of questions with regard to the media campaign. I think Mr. McCurdick-Jones, you touched on that. It's been a while, a few talks back, so I'm not sure. Is there going to be collaboration with the other cities when that gets rolled out, or is Kitchener just going to do it on their own?
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, Farnak, I switched screens by accident. I didn't see you unmuted. My apologies. Through the chair, yes, it'll be done in collaboration with the other municipalities, but more importantly, with the police service and public health. So it will be a joint effort. All those stakeholders are on our project team, and we'll continue to work with them over the course of Vision Zero.
That'll be far more impactful. And I would even go one step further. If you do the workshops or the pop-up things that collaborate with all the cities and do it all on the same day, make it a region-wide efforts as it goes along, and I think it'll have more impact. And the other question I have, and this won't surprise you, is with the 30 or 40 kilometer speed limit, where does that fall on the, I know there's not a timeline for this, but where would that fall on everything that you're getting done? When would we see 30 kilometers along on our streets relative to your whole project? I know that's quite a big question, but you can give me a guesstimate.
So through the chair, we have an action item that is about vulnerable street user areas. So through that action item, we will be conducting a more thorough evaluation of areas that have a larger volume of vulnerable street users. And one of the measures that could be applied to improve safety of those zones could be a further reduction in speed limits from 40 to 30 kilometers per hour. But this is something that has to be reviewed by staff as part of this action item. And this action item is planned to be completed in 2023. So we will come back to council with recommendations, with more concrete recommendations at that time.
So a year, that's fair. Yeah, year and a half, right? Okay. And the last comment I have is Councillor Galloway Seelock made the comment about the traffic calming, and I think somebody said 180 streets are looking for traffic calming. If that was the wrong number, I think it was right up there. I too have some concern if that has to be sacrificed during this, I guess, almost 4-year plan that you have. So I hope that we can come up with funding to continue the traffic calming that we're doing in the neighborhoods, because that is greatly needed. Thank you for all your work you're doing.
Through the chair, if I could just comment on that. I want to be clear in terms of some of the action items in Vision Zero. So one of the most critical action items in Vision Zero is hotspot implementation. So while we're recommending that we reallocate formal traffic calming funds to the Vision Zero program, much of that reallocation actually goes to hotspot implementation. So what that means is that we can redesign more roadways and have a greater impact on traffic than if we were simply to focus on the formal traffic calming program. So I want to be very clear that, the formal traffic calming program allows us to look at, three roads a year, potentially a handful of changes on each one of those roadways, and the hotspot implementation program that you'll see in Vision Zero really allows us to take a step back from that formal traffic calming program, still do one, but start to reallocate those funds into areas that we know are of concern, that have been quantitatively defined and data driven, and allow us to address more streets on an annual basis. So I think that when you look at the totality of Vision Zero and reallocating those formal traffic calming funds, we're still traffic calming as part of Vision Zero. It just looks a little bit different than what we've seen in the past, and I think this is a much better approach to the program overall.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Michaud, and thank you for that clarification, Mr. Cronkite. Mayor Urbanovic.
Thanks, Chair Ioannidis. And I think Councillor Galloway Seelock and Councillor Michaud were really getting at the other issue I had. Mr. Cronkite's response certainly helps, because I think one of the things we want to do is actually get in the habit of using data to make better decisions, and ultimately be more impactful with our decisions going forward. And so I think that's what we're attempting to achieve. I do share some concern, though, that with the long list that we have, that this may be something that's going to need revisiting in the future. I do like that in the recommendation there is the notion of coming back on an annual basis. So that would provide an opportunity to, I think, and I guess this is the essence of my question, in that annual review, would that give council an opportunity to review how things are going, and in fact, whether or not we want to change the funding mechanism for this, or put additional dollars so that it's not an either or situation, depending on the results that we're seeing.
Through the chair, yes, absolutely. So the intent of bringing back an annual report, at least part of the intent, is so that you can see where the council can see where those hotspot implementations will be in the following year. So you'll get a better sense when you see that first report recommending hotspot implementations of how much of an impact it actually has over and above the formal traffic calming program that we've been operating for the better part of a decade.
Okay. I'll see where, if Councillor Galloway Seelock wants to go somewhere else with that. But for the time being, I'm comfortable with leaving it the way the recommendation is, with the fact that we can do that. And I will make some comments, Mr. Chair, at the appropriate time.
Okay. Councillor Galloway Seelock.
It's not a question. It's not really a comment. Well, I guess it'll turn into a comment if you don't mind. You
can go ahead with the comments.
Okay. I was planning on bringing forward an amendment to ask staff to look at alternative funding sources for Vision Zero to allow for at least 2 traffic calming formal traffic calming to be done on a yearly basis. But in light of what Mayor Urbanovic has asked and what Councillor Michaud had heard, I'm willing to give it a year to see where we go with the hotspots, and we can revisit that in a year's time. But I just put up front that I am concerned. Like, we've got 180 streets on the formal traffic calming, and I'm concerned that we're using the majority of the funding for that cause. But I hear what you're saying, staff, and I'm putting it in your hands and trusting you that we'll see some improvements on some of the streets that we have on the formal traffic calming list. And so we'll revisit this in a year's time. Thank you.
Yeah, and I hear your concern, Councillor Galloway-Seelock and others. And, you know, maybe this may put into perspective, even if at our current rate of 3 a year, even it will take 60 years to go through that 180 streets. So, I mean, I think it's a good time to maybe look at something else. And I'm glad everyone's, you know, agree at that. So, okay. Mayor Urbanovic, you're up first for comments. And Councillor Galloway-Seelock, you still want to make comments, or are you're done? Done?
Okay, just very quickly, just want to thank staff again for the work that's been done on this. As has been pointed out by several people, I think this is really an important body of work on one of the issues that I know we hear about most, particularly that councillors hear about most within our wards throughout the city. And I think taking this kind of approach that is data-based and that builds on collaborations and on educating residents and citizens, I think is extremely important. We've seen positive results in other cities around the world, including here in North America, that have had positive results as a result of undertaking a Vision Zero approach. And, you know, while I understand the desire to see sort of measurable goals along the way, the real goal is a Vision Zero. That's why it's called that. And that's what we need to strive for. And I think along the way, we need to see progress that's moving us into that into that direction. And in those annual reports, it'll be up to the Council of the Day to review that and make sure that over the next 4 years, we're seeing the results that are being contemplated in the report as it's been presented today. So I'm excited about this, and hopefully that, you know, we'll ultimately see the same kind of uptake we many decades ago saw with the Blue Box when it was first introduced in our community, and that we see the same kind of social change. Sometimes, you know, as a result of being shamed by young kids in individual households, reminding mom and dad of their responsibilities to be part of the solution that ultimately ends up working, and hopefully we'll get to where we need to be as a community and as a region. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Urbanovic. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I just wanted to first say I was very happy with with this report, everything contained within this report. I personally believe technology will solve many of these problems. I think that we do have to make sure that we advocate to senior levels of government. There is technology already in cars that have the ability to identify a pedestrian or a cyclist automatically and apply braking. The problem is even though the cost of these systems were in the many tens of thousands of dollars not too long ago, they've since declined. My understanding is like $500 to $1,000. I think they should be standard, honestly, at that price point in all vehicles. And the price is only going to decline over the next few years. And I certainly believe the ingenuity of engineers to be able to bring the prices down as things go forward. And by setting that sort of policy guideline in the 10, 15 year time frame. But the point of this is we can't wait that long. We have to take some steps in the interim to try to do what we can to minimize any fatalities. So while we're waiting for technology to solve some of these problems, we have to start implementing some of the steps that we have here before us, and I'm happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chair Ioannidis. So I want to add my kudos to staff on the report, and as I mentioned before, kudos to the Vision Zero subcommittee from our Active Transportation and Trails Committee. I really want to urge staff to be bold and in our advocacy with other groups, other broader stakeholders, and I'd like us to see how we can work with other municipalities that are further along in the process of their Vision Zero strategies to learn from their learnings and make sure that we don't just make the same mistakes that they've already learned from, so that we can move forward together. I would say that it's really important that we recognize, yes, Vision Zero is our ultimate goal. That's the long-term goal. But what we've learned tonight from Professor Fu and from others is that we cannot just measure that one quantitative measurement. And so I'd like to really encourage staff to look at how can we use some of the other tools that were recommended by Dr. Fu and qualitative measures that were recommended by Mr. Brochuk, so that we can find successes as along the way. We're not going to feel in 5 years like we've really made a lot of progress unless we can see the progress measured in some ways. So that's what I hope we can do. And thank you again to staff for this coming forward. It's a great milestone.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Ioannidis. I just want to add my voice of thanks to staff for this incredible work. I mean, ever since I was elected, talking to the traffic team has been one of those frequent things I've done, and they've always responded so well to every issue. I believe that it took a lot of work and effort to do the research, and it's going to take a lot of work to implement it. We're going to need to be patient with it, but it's another great response and just shows how thorough and passionate our traffic team are about safety on our streets and sidewalks and in our neighborhoods. And I look forward to strongly supporting Vision Zero.
Thank you, Councillor Schneider. Yeah, for myself, I love how this is in an evolving document, and the holistic approach to traffic calming and traffic in general is really embedded in this. And I'm really looking forward to some of the new programs that are going to be implemented within this, like neighborhood speed limit reviews or hotspot improvements, vulnerable street users policy, pedestrian crossover handbook. The list goes on and on how holistic this program is. Aggressive driving and speeding educational campaign. I mean, this is a significant body of work, and it's really great work that's been done by our transportation staff, and with all the engagement that we're going to have with the community. I think this is the perfect timing, considering we're coming out of the pandemic, to start being bold, as Councillor Marsh had mentioned, to looking at this in a different approach than what we have in the past. And with that, it's been moved by Mayor Verbanovic. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Okay, we will go deal with our next item up, which is dealing with the Rotary Club of Kitchener 100th Anniversary Recognition Project. And we will go straight to delegations. And that will be our delegation is Bill Proctor from the Rotary Club of Kitchener. And we do have a few others here. I see Ms. Gardner and Mr. Decoy, I guess, and Mr. Rostrup. I guess you're all from the Rotary. I'm not sure if you're all part of the presentation or, but I will let your presentation proceed as needed.
Thank you. Hello, and thank you again for this opportunity to present to you. The Rotary Club of Kitchener is very proud to be celebrating our 100th anniversary. A goal of our anniversary celebration is to commemorate our legacy of a century of support and service to this community and beyond, and to promise to continue to do so for the next 100 years or more. With me today are Adrian Decoux, our current president, Louise Gardner, our immediate past president, Paul Rostub, another past president, and myself, past president and chair of our 100th anniversary committee. Next slide, please. One of the unique aspects of Rotary is that although it is an international organization, each club has significant autonomy in regard to the focus of the charitable work that they do. Our club has chosen to work at both the international and local levels, with a local city core focus on community, families, and children in need. As a follow-up to the one-on-one meetings we have already had, I'm going to take just a few minutes to review and highlight some of the key contributions we have made during our first 100 years. You have a more complete list in your information package. Next slide, please. Since our inception, we have made the support of children with special needs one of our primary objectives. From transporting children to Toronto and London for treatment, to the creation of the Rotary Children's Centre, to continued financial support of Kids Ability, we have continued to be true to this purpose. Next slide. Our wider support for women, children, and youth touches many areas of our community. For our 90th anniversary, we made a significant contribution to the House of Friendships campaign for a new women's addiction center. We joined with other local Rotary clubs to provide a computer study room for older children at Anselma House. We have been a longtime participant of the Rotary International Youth Exchange Program. Students experience the culture and language of a different country for a full year. One of the overall objectives of Rotary is to promote world peace and understanding, and the Rotary Youth Exchange Program plays an important part in this. Many of you have participated in the Youth Forum program we initiated for grade 10 civic students, providing them with a meaningful insight into municipal government. Next slide, please. Our grants and allocation program provides critical funding to numerous local organizations. Rotary is a non-religious and non-political organization, and we support organizations based solely on need and our available resources. Next slide, please. Another proud accomplishment of the Rotary Club of Kitchener is our support for the establishment of the KW Art Gallery. Next slide, please. Our support is not only of the financial kind, and we are working to increase our hands-on community work with more projects such as these listed here. Often a financial donation will lead to a more long-term association, which is what happened with our gift to the Women's Addiction Center. This led to a hands-on project creating their outdoor patio area. This was also the case with our support for the Nutrition for Learning program at Forest Hill Public School. Our initial financial support allowed for the purchase of a large industrial freezer, but it also led to our working 2 days a week, packing the lunches to be distributed to the students. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned earlier, we do a lot of work internationally. There are now over 50 child development care centers for AIDS orphans in South Africa. So far, our Rotary African Women's Education Fund has provided full funding for 98 young ladies to get a university education. Graduates return to their hometowns and villages to provide leadership and support in a variety of ways related to their field of study. Here are a few shots of Kitchener Rotarians taking action. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. In recognition of our 100 years of service to the community, we are asking the city for two things. Next slide. First, we would like you to accept our commemorative gift of $100,000 for the refurbishment of the Victoria Park Bandstand. This project is consistent with the current Victoria Park Master Plan, and the bandstand would be named the Rotary Bandstand. Next slide, please. Second, we are asking the city to name an asset in our honor in recognition of our century of service. The staff recommendation is that the Duke Street elevation at City Hall be named Rotary Plaza. There will be no additional expense to the city for this, as we are prepared to provide $10,000 for signage and possible additional features. Next slide, please. So thank you. Thank you for helping to commemorate our legacy and helping to raise awareness so that we can continue to keep our promise to continue to do good in our community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. I don't see any hands up for any questions. So I guess I will start off by just saying, wow, thank you kindly for such an amazing gift, and very, very appreciative of all the work that your organization has done in the community over the 100 years. And we are definitely a far better community because of all of the Rotary's efforts. And we'll have Councillor Johnson. Go ahead, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair Ioannidis, and I wanted to just say the same thing as well. The Rotary Club has such an amazing history here in our community, and has worked with so many youth and so many people to do really great things here. And this is just another example of your philosophy to be giving back to the community. And we're very, very appreciative. I look forward to seeing the changes be in place and to be able to celebrate with you at that time. So thank you so much again.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Mayor Verbanovic.
Thank you. And to Bill, Louise, Paul, and Adrian, I too want to say a heartfelt thank you for Rotary's legacy in our community, not only of your club, which is the original club, but in fact, all of the Rotary clubs, and what you've done with the Rotary Center and now Kids Ability, what you've done in terms of supporting the hospitals, so many different organizations in the community, but also, quite frankly, how you've carried the flag of this region, across Canada and around the world with the work that's been done, whether it's been in terms of the polio vaccine in Africa or the fire truck in Mexico. I mean, there's just been so many amazing stories of all of the clubs collectively from this region, and it's really a pleasure to be able to continue to partner and collaborate with you going forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Do I see any movers? Councillor Schneider. Again, I just want to reiterate the thanks. This is tremendous. Like, we can't say thanks enough. And I'm looking forward to the new bandstand and seeing that's progress over the year, and how it's going to enhance the park. That's just amazing. Okay, with that, it's been moved by Councillor Schneider. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. So again, thank you very much for coming.
And thank you.
Our next item up is dealing with significant planning applications update quarterly report, and Mr. Stevenson is here to provide us with a 5-minute presentation. Welcome, Mr. Stevenson.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening. And I'm happy to report I'll probably be less than 5 minutes. I'm quite thrilled tonight to be presenting the first quarterly report. This outlines the information on all current significant planning applications. We understand that it is important to provide greater transparency on significant development applications with the community and with council. This is the report. This is the first report of many that summarizes all the significant planning applications that are currently under review by the Planning Division and where no decision has been made. These are the applications that are in the current public consultation phase. This report is meant to be a quarterly resource to council and to keep council informed of all of the significant planning applications. The report is organized by ward so that it's a quick use resource for council to use. This report is intended to serve as an additional method to provide information in a clear and concise method, as well as a resource for council, and is in addition to our Story Map tool, which is our new map-based software that was launched last year and is updated by development planners weekly with updated and current information. And it's also in addition to all of the community engagement opportunities that the planning division gets to undertake with our community, including the neighborhood meetings, site walks, and small group meetings. It's my intention to present this report to council every March, June, September, and December of each year as a snapshot summary of the current applications. The significant development applications include all official plan amendments, zoning bylaw amendments, and subdivision applications. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, I hope I don't get told I can't ask this question, but so I really appreciate this. It's very, very useful and helpful. I was just wondering, Mr. Stevenson, some months ago, I asked if I could get a live document detailing developments in my ward above, I think I was saying 4 stories or 6 stories. Is that still happening? Can it still happen, and what would the timing of that be? And not just my ward, I mean, it would be for each ward councillor. And detailing, we've checked this part off the list. It's gone through site plan, it's gone through heritage, it's gone through that sort of thing, like a live document.
Through the chair, so as council is aware, we have finished our development services review and we're in the implementation phase of many of the recommendations. So there are a couple of avenues in which we're sharing information back with the community and with council. The report, this report is intended to highlight all official plan amendment applications regardless of height and zoning bylaw amendment applications regardless of height, as well as our subdivision applications. You'll know that we use the Story Map tool to share information with the community as well. And that's a tool that we're going to continue to expand in 2022, and we're going to continue to add application types to. So we know from our discussions with communities and with neighborhood associations that there is a desire for more information on applications like development control and site plan. We're working in 2022 to continue to build out that tool so that all that information would be available to council and to the community at any time. So this report is not specific to what a proposal is, but outlines all of the significant planning applications that are currently in consultation.
No, and I think this is wonderful. And the map is also very, very instructive and very good. I guess, I mean, we can take this offline, but it would be really helpful to have, as I said, a live working sheet that would give just something to look at quite quickly. And so somebody contacts me. So is it at the site plan review process yet, or where is it? And if we had a sheet that would check those things off, it would be very helpful. Anyway, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. That was a relatively appropriate question. So no problems with that one. Okay, Councillor Johnston.
Thank you. I have more of a comment. So do you want to come back to me, or do you?
No, go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Yeah, and thank you. Through you, Mr. Stevenson, I just wanted to thank you so much. I think that this is going to be so helpful along with traffic. This is probably the number 2 thing I get asked about is development applications in the ward and where they're at. So having more information available to the public to be able to look online and do some more research and be able to find some more information is going to be so incredibly helpful. I assume that when you come back, I think you said March quarterly, I believe you said that you'll be coming back with a report. And maybe there are, as Councillor Chapman was asking, maybe there are some things that, once you get the report in place, that we might be able to ask if they could be included or maybe changed up a little bit because of the frequency of the report. Perhaps that's something we can look at, but I'm thrilled that you and your team are looking into this. So thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Davey.
Actually, I'm going to take Councillor Johnson's lead and turn mine into a sort of a comment, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair.
Oh, no, it's okay. Go ahead.
Okay, great. I think this is great. And I'm going to I was going to ask the question, I was going to turn it into a comment instead, because sometimes over the years, I've noticed that as councillors, we ask questions for more information that we think are simple, and it turns out it actually quite a bit of work behind the scenes. So as fantastic as this is, my understanding is it doesn't necessarily include anything that's going to be built that's being built as of right within the existing zoning. So I would just say, if it's a simple thing in the future, like I don't know what threshold you want to include, but it would be good for us to know if there's any significant within zoning structures being built, an apartment or stacked townhouse complex, that sort of thing that could be added. As well, having an idea of what the legislative deadlines are for these to be approved, if that can be included as well. And again, I'm being clear, I'm not officially requesting this, I'm just saying if it's a simple thing to do, that's the information I'd like to see. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you, Councillor Ioannidis, Chair Ioannidis. I think this is a great little package. It compartmentalizes everything that you need at a first view. But I do agree with Councillor Davey. If there are more like simple things you can add as we go along, I think that would certainly help. But when I read this, I was really pleased to see it. Kind of gives you all the information of what's going on in all the other wards too. So, and we don't sometimes know all of that because the councillors, go to their own neighborhood meetings and we have ours, but you can see what's happening on here. So I really appreciate this. It's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Michaud. Councillor Marsh.
Yeah, thanks. So Mr. Stevenson, can you respond? Is it going to be easy for you to just add the legislative date by which it needs to be reviewed?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we can add the date the application was deemed complete, and then based on the application type, it's either 90 or 120 days beyond that date.
Okay,
so that
great.
would be relatively easy to add.
Super. And so is this going to be a document that will live on our website as well, or is it just sort of a snapshot more for a quarterly report?
It's anticipated that it will be searchable as part of the minutes of the committee. I was not intending on putting it separately on the website because we do have the story map application, which is updated every night. So it's the website tool is actually the most live version of it.
Oh, right. Every night, not week. You said weekly earlier. So that's it. Okay. So it's updated constantly. All right.
Yes, there's a couple of updates a week and different parts get updated, but yeah, it's almost as good as live.
Terrific. Okay, thank you so much. And I know that members of the public who follow development issues closely will be very pleased to see this document. And I know, I join the rest of my colleagues who've said how helpful they will find it, and I do too. So thanks very much for putting this together and for your proactive approach.
My pleasure.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Marsh. Do we have a mover? Councillor Davey. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously as well. And that concludes today's Community Infrastructure Committee today. We have a mover to adjourn. Councillor Michaud. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Okay.